Picture an antelope with a nose that looks like an elephant's trunk, an animal that survived the Ice Age, mammoths, and saber-toothed predators, yet almost vanished in the 21st century because of human greed. 20 years ago, the saiga was right on the edge of extinction, and today, millions of these ancient creatures are roaming the Kazakh steppe again. This is the story of how one country managed to do the almost impossible and revive an entire ecosystem. Subscribe to the channel. It's about to get genuinely interesting. The saiga is a lot more than just an antelope. It is a living fossil, a true witness to the age of mammoths. Back when woolly rhinos walked across Europe, saigas were already grazing peacefully on the endless Eurasian steppe. Their unusual bulbous nose helped filter out dust during long migrations and warm the icy air of the harsh Ice Age. In the 19th century, countless herds of saiga blanketed the steppe from what is now Hungary all the way to distant Mongolia. Travelers wrote about herds stretching for dozens of miles and disappearing into the horizon. The ground trembled under the hooves of hundreds of thousands of animals moving in search of fresh grass. The Kazakh steppe was their main home, their true kingdom. But the 20th century brought a real disaster for the saiga. First, mass hunting for meat and hides slashed their numbers. Then industrialization arrived. The virgin lands were plowed up and the steppe was turned into farmland. By mid-century, the population had fallen to a critically low level, and the worst was still ahead. The 1990s became a truly dark chapter in the saiga's story. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the conservation system fell apart, losing oversight and funding. Poachers were given almost complete freedom. The steppe turned into a slaughterhouse because male saiga horns on China's traditional medicine market were worth more than gold. Organized hunting crews in jeeps with automatic weapons swept the steppe like military convoys. They shot only males for the horns, then left the carcasses to rot under the blazing sun. Females and calves were left without protection and without a future. The ecosystem was falling apart in real time, and in just one decade, the population crashed from 1 million animals to a miserable 20 to 40,000. By 2005, the situation became truly critical. Scientists warned that the species could disappear completely within the next 5 to 10 years. The saiga was listed as critically endangered, in the same category as the Amur tiger and the black rhino. It seemed this ancient animal was doomed to share the mammoth's fate. And right then, the turning point came, changing the course of events. Kazakh authorities realized the scale of the looming ecological catastrophe and made a decision that determined the species' future. The Altyn Dala program was launched, translated as Golden Steppe. It became the largest wildlife restoration project in the region. Major international organizations joined the effort, including the Frankfurt Zoological Society, the Saiga Conservation Alliance, and the World Wildlife Fund. Scientists, rangers, local residents, and government officials came together as one. Everyone had the same goal: save the saiga at any cost. The first key step was creating vast areas placed under strict protection. Millions of acres of steppe and semi-desert landscapes were brought under protection. These spaces are so large, you can even see them from space. Additional ecological corridors were set up, linking separate saiga habitats into a single connected system. Then came a tough, no-compromises fight against poachers. Mobile ranger units were created, armed and trained to standards close to military. They patrolled the steppe in SUVs and ATVs, used drones and satellite surveillance systems. Now, every poacher understood they would be found and punished. In parallel, a major public education campaign began in rural areas. People were told that the saiga is not quick cash, it is part of the nation's heritage and pride. Schools held special lessons, screened documentaries, and organized trips into the steppe. Kids and adults learned to see these antelope not as prey, but as a living symbol of their land. The first visible results did not come right away. It took years of patient work. The population grew very slowly because saigas remain vulnerable even with strong protection. Females give birth to 1 or 2 calves a year, and a significant share of young die in the first months of life. Predators, disease, and brutal winters relentlessly thinned the herds. In 2015, a new blow struck that could have erased every achievement. A mass outbreak of hemorrhagic septicemia linked to Pasteurella bacteria amid abnormal heat and high humidity killed more than 200,000 saiga in 2 weeks. Whole enormous herds literally dropped dead. Scientists were stunned. Such a massive die-off of mammals hadn't been seen since rinderpest in Africa. It seemed years of effort had gone up in smoke. But the project team refused to give up. Emergency research was carried out. Specialists figured out how the outbreak developed and designed preventive measures. Veterinary monitoring was strengthened, quarantine zones were created, and response protocols were drilled. Work to protect the species continued without a pause. By 2018, the saiga population started growing fast again. Under good conditions, these antelope are extraordinarily fertile. Females reach sexual maturity at around 8 months. With good forage and without major threats, a herd can double in just 2 to 3 years. The recovery numbers looked genuinely impressive. In 2019, there were about 600,000 animals. In 2020, the number topped 1 million. In 2021, the population reached roughly 1.5 million, and in 2022, it approached 2 million. The Kazakh steppe filled up with life again, and with the movement of massive herds. Population counts were done using aircraft and satellite imagery to cover the huge areas. Pilots flew over the steppe and photographed clusters of animals from the air. Then, specialized software analyzed the images and counted individuals. On top of that, some saiga were fitted with GPS collars to track their migration routes. By 2023, the saiga population in Kazakhstan had reached striking levels, by different estimates from 1.9 million to 4.1 million animals, depending on the counting method. The International Union for Conservation of Nature officially lowered the species status from critically endangered to near threatened. That meant the immediate risk of extinction had eased, though it was still too early to relax. This result became a rare success story in global conservation of large mammals. No other large species has rebounded at this speed. For comparison, the American bison needed more than 100 years to even partly recover its numbers. The humpback whale, despite a long-standing ban on commercial whaling, still has not reached historical levels, while the saiga managed to come back in just 15 years. But the return of millions of animals brought not only joy, it brought new challenges. Huge saiga herds began competing with livestock for limited pasture. Farmers started complaining that the antelope trampled grass they saved for sheep and cattle. Tension between people's interests and the needs of wildlife started to rise. In a number of areas, saigas began entering croplands more often and causing noticeable damage to fields. People who had recently celebrated the return of wildlife were now facing direct economic losses. That created a sharp conflict, with conservation on one side and the day-to-day needs of local residents on the other. To reduce tension, the government developed the compensation system for farmers. If saiga herds damaged crops or pasture, farm owners could receive cash reimbursement from a special fund. At the same time, buffer zones began to be formed between protected areas and farmland, steering migration routes farther away from fields. Gradually, an idea emerged: cautious, controlled use of this natural resource. Some specialists suggested allowing limited saiga hunting under strict quotas and tough oversight. That could give local residents extra income and reduce pressure on pasture. But the proposal sparked heated debate among conservationists and split the expert community. By 2025, Kazakhstan's Ministry of Ecology stated that by 2026, the population could exceed 5 million animals. That effectively meant the species had been restored to a scale close to historical. The steppe was becoming home to millions of hooved animals again, the way it was thousands of years ago. The saiga's return triggered a chain reaction in the steppe ecosystem. Along with the antelope, their natural predators came back too. Predators that had almost vanished before. Wolves, once nearly wiped out, started showing up in the steppe again. Steppe eagles noticeably increased in number thanks to the sudden abundance of food. Saiga play a central role in the steppe ecosystem. They do not just eat grass, they actively reshape the landscape. The hooves of millions of animals loosen the top layer of soil, helping new plants sprout. Their droppings act as natural fertilizer, enriching the ground with key nutrients. Saiga spread the seeds of many plants across thousands of miles. During migrations, when they travel hundreds of miles, the animals disperse flora and increase plant diversity. Studies have shown that in areas with high saiga density, plant species richness is about 30% higher. Even the bodies of dead saiga play an important role in the ecosystem. Many scavengers depend entirely on that food source. One dead saiga can feed dozens of species of organisms, from tiny beetles to large vultures. Restoring the steppe gave the region a real economic boost. Ecotourism turned into a full-fledged new industry. Tourists from all over the world came to watch saiga migrations, considered one of the most spectacular wildlife shows on the planet. Locals opened guest houses, became guides, and sold souvenirs. International recognition arrived in 2024. The Altyn Dala project received the prestigious Earthshot Prize in the Protect and Restore Nature category. This award, founded by Prince William, is among the most respected in environmental work. The prize brought not only publicity, but also £1 million British in funding. The money went toward expanding protected zones, training new rangers, and supporting scientific work. Kazakhstan's experience became a model for other countries trying to bring back disappearing species. Kazakhstan's achievements motivated neighboring countries. In Uzbekistan, where only about 500 saiga remained, a restoration program of its own began. Near the dried-up Aral Sea, a reserve was created and added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan signed a memorandum on joint work. They plan to create cross-border protected areas and migration corridors. Saiga ignore national borders. They need thousands of square miles for seasonal movements. Russia also joined the process. In the Caspian lowland steppe, saiga numbers grew in a few years from 4,500 to 38,000 animals. That is smaller than the Kazakh scale, but it is still solid progress. Mongolia is working to restore its unique saiga subspecies, the Mongolian saiga. Numbers have grown to 14 to 15,000 animals. The Mongolian steppe is gradually coming back to life, even if it still cannot match Kazakhstan's success yet. Within the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species, there is a special international saiga agreement. It includes all range countries, including Kazakhstan, Russia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Mongolia. This is the first example of so many states uniting for a single steppe species. The most ambitious step became reintroducing the saiga to China. The species disappeared there 75 years ago. Kazakhstan decided to transfer 1,500 wild individuals to China to rebuild the population on its historical lands. This is a massive project to move wild animals between countries. Scientists carefully select candidates, check the health of every individual, and prepare them for transport. The saiga will be delivered in special enclosures, where they will go through quarantine before release into the Chinese steppe. Chinese authorities prepared several reserves covering more than 1 million acres. They installed watering sites, feeding areas, and hired rangers. If everything goes well, the saiga will return to lands where it has not been seen since the Chinese Civil War. Scientists worldwide are closely studying the Kazakh experience. Geneticists analyze saiga DNA, figuring out how a small population avoided inbreeding and genetic decline. It turned out that migration between different herds helped maintain high genetic diversity. Ecologists study how climate shifts affect saiga. Kazakhstan's steppe is drying out and getting hotter. Droughts happen more often. It is still unclear how that will affect the population in the future, but so far, the animals are showing a strong ability to adapt. Veterinarians created an early warning system for outbreaks. After the 2015 tragedy, they continuously monitor herd health. They regularly collect samples and test for pathogens. At the slightest sign of an outbreak, they immediately begin measures. Wildlife rescue methods do not stand still. Now, artificial intelligence helps process satellite images. Programs automatically determine herd sizes, migration paths, and detect anomalies. That saves scientists hundreds of hours of routine work. Drones with thermal cameras fly over the steppe at night, tracking poachers. The system instantly sends the violators' coordinates to the nearest rangers. Response time dropped from hours to 20 to 30 minutes. Steppe residents became key partners in protecting the saiga. A network of inspectors from local herders was organized. They know every patch of ground and notice anything suspicious. Rewards are paid for tips about poachers. Young people are brought in through educational initiatives. Kids take part in saiga counts, set up cameras, and plant grasses for pasture. A generation is growing up for whom caring for nature becomes part of their identity, not just an obligation. The project's economics proved sustainable. A live saiga brings far more value than a dead one. Ecotourism, research grants, and support from abroad create jobs and income for locals. Photographers from all over the world pour into Kazakhstan to capture saiga migrations. Their photos appear in National Geographic, the BBC, and other top outlets. The country gets powerful free promotion of its unique nature. Film studios make documentaries about the steppe comeback. Stories of rangers fighting poachers for life's sake move millions of viewers. The saiga became an icon of hope, showing that humanity can fix its mistakes. The saiga's significance in Kazakh culture is taking on a new voice. In the past, steppe nomads treated these antelope with respect, seeing them as the spirits of their native steppe. Today, artists, writers, and musicians find deep inspiration in the gripping story of the saiga's return. In Astana, they created a museum of steppe nature. The main exhibit is dedicated to saving the saiga. Visitors watch migrations live on interactive screens. Kids put on VR headsets and find themselves inside a thundering herd of antelope. Success has not removed every danger. Poaching has not disappeared, it has simply become more covert. On the black market, saiga horns are still valuable. 1 kilogram costs thousands of dollars, which is a huge temptation for a poor steppe resident. Infrastructure development creates fresh problems. Roads, gas pipelines, and power lines break up saiga habitat. Animals run into fences and cannot complete their usual migration routes. Climate shifts make life in the steppe more unpredictable. Extreme weather is becoming more frequent. Summer droughts are intensifying, and winters are getting harsher with ice crust forming over the steppe. During tsud events, saiga cannot reach grass under the ice and die in mass starvation. Specialists are developing ways to adapt to the new climate. They plan additional watering sites at key points. They discuss supplemental feeding in critical periods, even though it clashes with the ideals of wild nature. The main goal is to raise a self-sufficient population without constant human help. Saiga should roam freely across the steppe the way they have for thousands of years, guided by natural instincts. That requires gigantic space. Calculations show that for a stable 5 to 6 million animals, you need at least 50 million hectares of suitable land. That is an area larger than Spain. Kazakhstan has that kind of land. Steppe and semi-desert cover the lion's share of the country. But these expanses are used for livestock, mineral extraction, and cropland. The main challenge is to balance progress and nature protection. The idea of shared land use is gaining strength. Instead of a hard split between reserves and farms, mixed zones are created. Here, under ecologist supervision, livestock and wild saiga graze side by side. Herders are taught to rotate their herds, leaving forage for wild animals. Nomadic pastoralism is being revived, where herds move without trampling the land to death. This approach helps people and the ecosystem. The Kazakh project serves as an example for the world. In Africa, they save antelope. In America, pronghorn. In Mongolia, Zeren. Saiga lessons are applied everywhere. The key discovery is that recovery is possible with political will, money, and public support. Leave out any one element and the project will fail. Together, they create real miracles. Money remains the sore point. Millions of dollars a year go to rangers, equipment, science, and payments to farmers. How do you secure funding for decades? They are looking for different paths. Payments for ecosystem services from countries that benefit from the steppe. Carbon credits for absorbing CO2. Ecotourism as an independent business. There is an idea for a world-class steppe park like the Serengeti or Yellowstone. It would attract tens of thousands of visitors a year, but it needs extensive infrastructure with hotels and roads. Every saiga in the steppe today is a triumph over despair. Proof that ecological disasters can be reversed. A reminder of nature's incredible resilience with the right support. The saiga's comeback in Kazakhstan is more than one project. It is proof that will, resources, and public support can fix past catastrophes. From 20,000 to 5 million in 20 years. An Ice Age antelope survived civilization thanks to people who refused to quit. Subscribe to the channel and tell me your region.